Welcome back to Movie to Blender. I'm Darren, and this time I'm trying something new. Anyone who's familiar with my site knows that I do a lot of movie trivia and reviews, and that's because movies were a big part of my life growing up, and they're a big part of my life now. But there is a close second, and that's something else I'd like to talk about. So I'll be experimenting with something new, and if people like it, I'll keep doing it. For now, I'd like to talk about a game that was pretty popular and probably is still critically acclaimed, but I always had a small problem with. It's Batman Arkham City. So let's jump right in, but be careful because here, there be spoilers.
What will we do with the drunken sailor? What will we do with the drunken sailor early in the morning?
So before talking about Arkham City, let's just touch on its predecessor, Arkham Asylum. I loved Arkham Asylum. I loved everything about it. I loved the combat, I loved the exploration, I especially loved the characters, but I loved the story. For me, video games are good whenever they're a combination of good action and a good story. Sadly, I cannot say the same for Arkham City. While Arkham City has the same combat and even improves on it in some cases, where it really fell down for me was some of the side quests and stories. Let's start with how you start off. Bruce Wayne is adamantly opposed to the creation of Arkham City, which is run by Hugo Strange. So, in the middle of a press conference, right outside Arkham City's gates, Bruce Wayne gets taken by Hugo Strange's guards and thrown in the city, completely ignoring all due process, completely ignoring everything legal. Now, I know it's Gotham, so the law is always kind of in the back seat, and really the only person who supports the law is Commissioner Gordon and Batman. It's really strange that they took this approach, because later on there's a side quest that actually explains why Bruce Wayne could have been thrown into Arkham City. The side quest I'm talking about is the one with the identity thief. A man is going around cutting off people's faces, and later on you find out that it's actually Hush who has made himself look like Bruce Wayne.
I take it you're here to stop me?
What do you think?
I think you're too late. But you look just like Bruce Wayne.
He's done this so he can destroy Wayne's life by pretending to be him. That would have been a perfect introduction into how Hugo Strange got Bruce Wayne into the city. Hush, disguised as Bruce Wayne, commits a crime, commits a murder, does anything that would slander his good name, and then Hugo Strange would have a reason to throw Bruce Wayne into Arkham City. Now, sure, there would still be the legal processes, but it's more convincing than just, he was outside the gate, let's throw him in. But that's part of a bigger problem. The side quests and the main plot have a lot of disconnect. Referring back to Arkham Asylum, there wasn't too many side quests beyond looking at a specific thing at a specific time or finding Riddler trophies and prizes, which Arkham City also has, but not in such a great degree. So once Bruce Wayne is thrown in, he has to gear up, become Batman, get his weapons and gadgets, and figure out what's going on in the city. Here's another thing that happens that I really didn't like. Alfred flies in this little drone that drops in Batman's equipment. That was a mistake, I believe, because later on there's a side quest where you actually talk to Robin. Now, I believe this was a setup for a DLC that I didn't try, or still not really aware if it's out yet, but I thought it would have been really interesting if either Robin or Catwoman, who also shows up, is the one who brings Bruce Wayne his Batman guard. It would set up why these side characters are in there, and I think just make the story flow a little bit better. Instead, Catwoman, I guess, is just thrown into Arkham City, but she steals from all the thieves, and I don't know, that just felt very strange to me. So the first thing you have to do whenever you can finally control Batman again is to save Catwoman from Two-Face. But here's a big problem with that. Two-Face is a great rogue for Batman, but he's not really an intimidating boss fight. And that's really the problem here, is that we have all of Batman's villains set up as boss fights when usually in any story, if Batman gets to them, the fight is over. Now, you could say the same thing for Arkham Asylum, but for Arkham Asylum, it was more experiencing these weird personas before taking them down. But here, the characters really don't have any personality to them. Two-Face isn't as intimidating as he is just, I don't know, ridiculous. And the same goes with Penguin. It really felt like they were just thrown in. They didn't really have anything to do with the plot as a whole. It's just an inconvenience to stand in your way. and there are a lot of those in Arkham City. Exploring the city, you do find that the Riddler has set up more traps and puzzles, but these weren't as clever as they were in the Arkham Asylum. You didn't really get any backstory about the city, any more info on characters. Arkham Asylum did a really great job of introducing people who wouldn't know these characters by introducing bios, the recordings to give you samples of the personalities, how they think, how they talk, what they do. It was really cool that they could bring in a lot of the lesser known villains, but again, I didn't really get to know them that well, so they're still lesser known. It was actually, some of the best side quests were tracking down villains that you've already fought before, like Zsasz. Zsasz was established in Arkham Asylum as being a crazed serial killer who just murders for the love of it. And in Arkham City, he's taunting you by calling payphones, and if you don't get to them in time, he executes one of his hostages. And I thought that was a fantastic side quest. It keeps Batman on his toes, but it still gives you a little bit of Zsasz's personality. Another thing that bothered me early on was during the Penguin fight, well, the Penguin's not much of a fighter, so mostly he just drops you down into a pit with Solomon Grundy. Now, that felt extremely out of place. Solomon Grundy, if you're not familiar with him, is basically the comic book version of Frankenstein. And while it was a challenging fight, and I guess interesting to actually fight something like him, it really just held up the story. But that's another problem. I didn't really know what the story was. Batman was just meandering around the city until you finally figure out what's going on, and when you do, it's not really anything worth knowing. The plot is that Ra's al Ghul, one of Batman's oldest villains, literally, has established Arkham City through Hugo Strange so that he can basically round up all the criminals in Gotham and then kill them all at once. Which really isn't opposed to what Ra's al Ghul would do, but I don't think he would do it in this way. He throws all the criminals into the city and then plans to use attack helicopters to blow them all up, but that's really lame. Especially considering Joker's plan in Arkham Asylum. It was to turn Batman into a monster and let him rampage on the city. That's perfect. That is a perfect goal for the Joker. It is insane, yet it does have a humorous twist to it. Here, though, Hugo Strange is nothing but a lackey for Ra's al Ghul, and Ra's al Ghul is just building a city for no good reason so he can kill people. He could have done that any other time. And with attack helicopters, well, it had to be something that Batman could stop. But still, that's not the worst part of it for me. What really bothered me is that before the big reveal that Ra's al Ghul was behind it all, there was a big reveal that Ra's al Ghul was behind it all. You find Ra's al Ghul earlier on in a forgotten part of the city, and though Batman remarks on why this is odd, he doesn't actually ever follow it up. Ra's al Ghul is hiding underneath Gotham City. He would never do that unless he had a big plan. But that also leads way to another problem. There was a third story going on as well. That's right, Ra's al Ghul under the city, Hugo Strange on top, and there's also the Joker, who is dying from a mysterious illness that he's given Batman and several other citizens of Gotham. So now, Batman is spending all of his time finding a cure to the disease, then he has to stop Hugo Strange, and then he's going to go after Ra's al Ghul, and then whoever else happens to be on the way. That is too complicated. It really felt like the Joker was just thrown in. He's a flimsy part of the plot and does nothing to really improve it. One of the big problems is that compared to Arkham Asylum, this Joker just is no fun. The chemistry between Batman and the Joker is something that is legend among the superhero community. But here, I don't know, I just didn't feel it. Well, that might also be because the Joker's not actually the Joker. He is being played by Clayface. They brought in Clayface, one of the best villains for Batman. He is a man-turned-creature who can turn into anyone and can produce any weapon. It's a lot like having Batman's villain being the T-1000 from Terminator 2. But he's completely wasted here. He's either pretending to be the Joker, and only the Joker, or he fights Batman in one rather lackluster fight at the very end. Speaking of endings, Hugo Strange gets done in by Ra's al Ghul, who is then done in by Batman, which only leaves the Joker and the deadly disease. So what is the solution to the problem? Oh, well, Ra's al Ghul brought some of this Lazarus Pit with him, and if the Joker jumps into it, he'll become as immortal as Ra's al Ghul. That was extremely disappointing. For one, that Ra's al Ghul would bring the Lazarus Pit with him to Gotham, a place that he planned on destroying. I'm not sure if he would do that or not. That's kind of maybe against his character, but who knows? But also because the Joker in the Lazarus Pit, I mean, I guess it's interesting that they interact with each other, but I don't know. That just feels off for me. Especially whenever there is a good setup to something even more interesting. Early on, you find there's a side quest where you actually get to meet the Mad Hatter. What if instead of Hugo Strange working for Ra's al Ghul, Hugo Strange was working for himself? What if Hugo Strange was throwing all these supervillains together so he could take their powers and gadgets? Starting off with the Mad Hatter. He could take the Mad Hatter's mind control and try to use that to make the world a better place. Through his own flawed ethics, of course. He would think that if I can control the minds of these super criminals, I could control the minds of any criminals. Therefore, I can make the world free from crime by simply controlling people's thoughts. That's great. It's very megalomaniacal of him, and it would also have a good reason for why these supervillains are all kind of fighting Batman, even though they're in their own jail. I think it would have made the story a lot tighter and still opened up a lot of more possibilities. For now, it's just a bland story. Great fighting, great action, bland story. It's hard to feel like I'm an ass-kicking superhero when the villain's main plot is almost laughably stupid. Overall, a lot of wasted potential. I could still enjoy the game, but I don't know. It's hard to look forward to that ending. Anyway, that's it for me for now. Until next time, I'm Darren with Moving to Blender.